Hi, it's Rabbi Jeremy from Mahar, and this is our Words on Wednesday video. Right now, we're halfway through the holiday of Sukkot, and we've done a couple of videos with words related to Sukkot. Sukkot ends with a holiday called Shmini Atzeret, which just means 8th day of assembly, and we don't really know exactly why you celebrate Shmini Atzeret, but it's in the Torah. And then after that comes a holiday called Simchat Torah, which means rejoicing in the Torah, or joy of the Torah, something like that. And I've now said the word Torah a bunch. What does Torah even mean? So today, our word on Wednesday is going to be just the one word, Torah, which has a really broad range of meanings, a really wide number of things that Torah means, and a lot of ways it's important for Judaism in all its forms, humanistic Judaism, every other kind of Judaism. So, let's talk about the word Torah. Torah comes from a Hebrew root, Yud Resh He, and that root means to throw or to shoot or to cast or to teach. And the idea is that the Torah is something that is taught. You give instructions out. You kind of throw instructions out there, shoot instructions out, and that's probably some of where the idea of Torah and instruction come together with that root Yud Resh He. So Torah means instruction. And this gets really wacky because we talk about the Torah, and the Torah itself uses the word Torah to talk about instructions that aren't its own instructions. So we'll tell a story and say that Moses instructed the people to do XYZ thing, and the word it will use is Torah. Moses gave an instruction. So Torah means instruction at kind of a really basic level. But we know the Torah in a bunch of other ways too. So we could be talking when we say Torah about the scroll itself. Go bring me the Torah. So that's one meaning of Torah, is the actual scroll that has the books of the Torah in it. Another thing we might mean are the text in the book itself. So on the scroll is written a bunch of texts. We could be talking about the books that are in the Torah, including, this says the Torah in English, including the Hebrew and the names of the book, right, all of that stuff. So here's the story of the flood in Genesis. Genesis is one of the 5 books of the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So we could have the Torah, the text itself. Okay. We can also be talking, when we say Torah, we can also be talking about all of the stuff, all of the literature, all of the ideas, all of the discussions that interpret what's in the Torah, or that interpret what's in the Bible, or that interpret all of the things that are about Jewish life. For example, this is one volume of a 6-volume set of a book called Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is a legal code, a Jewish legal code, from the mid-1800s. Interprets another legal code. That legal code tries to summarize all of these other laws and interpretations of Torah that came about before it. So Mishnah Berurah interprets a legal code from the 1500s. The legal code from the 1500s is looking at almost 2,000 years worth of Torah learning. So Torah can be the figuring out the rules. Torah can be all of the learning about those rules and all of the learning about all of the stories that we find in the Torah, in the Bible, and in other Jewish literature trying to interpret the Torah. So Torah gets to be a really big concept. It can be almost all Jewish learning, because in some way, almost everything about Jewish culture ties back in some way to the things that are in the Torah, the original books, in some way. Sometimes it's really thin connection, but it's sometimes there. So that's Torah in its broadest sense, Jewish learning. Now, we should talk about what Torah means for humanistic Jews, because this is important. There are many Jews who believe that what's in the Torah in the scroll was either directly dictated to Moses from heaven, or that Moses was somehow divinely inspired to write what he did, and that the rules that are in the Torah are rules that bind us because they are in that book, and that the rules that people interpreted bind us because they're interpreting the rules in that book. We're, as humanistic Jews, very straightforward about, no, we don't think that was divinely inspired, but we do recognize that that's such a key part of Judaism in all of its forms, that it's our book too, and we study it too. And that we study all of the other Torah stuff too. But we recognize that these are all the results of human effort. And because they're results of human effort, we have not just the ability, but the obligation, not just the ability, we have to look at all of those things and figure out what seems true, what doesn't, and then decide what to do based on our judgments of whether they're true or they're not. This means that some humanistic Jews look at the Torah as fiction, as a story. They don't think that the stories happen, and they don't think that we're obliged, that we're required to do the things that the Torah says people are supposed to do. There are other humanistic Jews who think, well, maybe we should follow some of the rules and not others. We're humanistic Jews. We let people decide for themselves. But a defining piece of what humanistic Judaism is about is still about dealing with the things that come out of the Torah as they've come to us through the ages. That is all part of the inheritance of being a humanistic Jew. So that's our word for Wednesday, Torah. I hope you learned something. If you didn't, maybe rewind it and watch again. I don't know. Maybe I'm just boring. In any case, I hope that you enjoyed, I hope that you learned something, and I hope that I'll see you again soon. Bye.